I was a mob boss. Yet somehow I transmigrated into a spineless live-in son-in-law. When I opened my eyes, my wife was actually throwing divorce papers in my face in public. Not only did she force me to leave with nothing, she even demanded that I kneel and apologize to her new boyfriend. Everyone burst out laughing. She said, "After you kneel, I'll reward you with 500,000. The next second, I grabbed a wine bottle and smashed it against her head with all my strength. Amid her distorted screams, I cursed furiously. "Then I'll reward you with a big slap and see if you still dare act crazy." Chapter 1. The smoke in the private room scraped against my throat, while the stench of alcohol clung to my nose. The crystal chandelier overhead swayed slightly, making my eyes ache. When I opened my eyes, one knee was pressed into the carpet, and a fountain pen was still clenched in my hand. On the coffee table in front of me lay a divorce agreement. Willow sat in the middle of the sofa, her black dress draped neatly over her knees, a slim cigarette resting between her fingers. The man beside her wore a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. An expensive watch hugged his wrist as he looked down at me with a faint smile. "George, sign it." Willow stubbed out her cigarette in the crystal ashtray, her voice so cold it cut like a blade. "We've stayed married for 3 years. That's already more than enough respect shown to the Wong family." I lowered my eyes to the agreement. "Leave the marriage with nothing. Waive all marital assets. Give up all dividends from the Liu family's projects. Acknowledge suffering from mental illness during the marriage." The pen tip pierced straight through the paper. Then memories that weren't mine crashed into my mind. The original George Wong was a member of a branch of the Wong family. To save his father's failing company, he had married into the Liu family 3 years ago. He poured Willow Liu's tea, ran errands for her like a servant, took the blame whenever something went wrong, and let everyone in her social circle treat him like a joke. Tonight, Willow's true love, Makoto, had returned. She had summoned George here to force him to sign the papers in front of everyone. With a smile, Makoto bent down and slid a glass of wine toward me. "George, stop pretending to be tough. Willow isn't completely heartless. Kneel down and offer me a toast, and we'll end this with everyone's dignity intact." Someone in the room whistled. "Kneel already. Young Master Wong, weren't you always such a simp? You've been living off the heiress for years." Bow to her boyfriend. There's nothing embarrassing about it. One after another, phones were raised to record. The cold glow of their screens illuminated my face. Willow leaned back against the sofa without the slightest attempt to hide the contempt in her eyes. "Kneel," she said, "and I'll reward you with 500,000. I rolled my neck. A sharp crack echoed from my cervical spine. "So, you really can be reborn after death." Just moments ago, I had been in a dockside warehouse, stabbed in the back. Blood had flooded my throat, while the sea breeze carried the metallic scent of rust. My name was David. I had been the top enforcer of one of the city's most powerful syndicates. I'd cut people down for my boss, taken knives for my brothers, and personally stuffed traitors into car trunks. And now, I had become George, spineless, humiliated, a man everyone trampled beneath their feet. I looked up at Willow. She frowned. "What are you staring at?" I smiled, planting one hand on the edge of the coffee table. I slowly rose to my feet. As my knee left the carpet, my stiff joints tingled, and dried wine stains clung to my trousers. Makoto reached out to stop me, pressing a hand onto my shoulder. "Who told you that you could stand up?" I looked at his hand. Fair, long fingers, soft skin, not a single callus. I grabbed his index finger and bent it backward. Crack! Makoto's scream exploded through the room. His wineglass toppled over, crimson wine splashing across his white shirt like a sheet of fresh blood. Chapter 2. The private room fell completely silent. Willow shot to her feet. "George." She grabbed the crystal ashtray from the table and hurled it at my face. I tilted my head. The ashtray grazed past my ear before smashing against the wall, showering the room with shattered glass. My ear rang. Warm blood trickled down from the edge of it. I reached for the bottle of red wine on the table. The glass was icy in my hand, with half of the label still wrapped around the base. Willow's pupils shrank. "What are you doing?" I took one long stride forward and swung with all my strength. Bang! The bottle smashed into the side of her forehead. The shattering glass drowned out everyone's gasp. Wine and blood splashed across her face as she crashed back onto the sofa. Her fingers clawed at the cushion. Her lips parted, but no scream came out. Clutching his injured hand, Makoto stumbled backward into the coffee table. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor. I tossed away the broken bottleneck and stepped on the back of his hand. A distorted cry escaped his throat. "George, you've gone insane." I bent down and looked him in the eye. Then I slowly ground my shoe harder. I could feel the bones pressing against the flesh beneath my sole. A girl screamed. Someone dropped their phone onto the carpet. The screen was still recording. I said, "I'm in a really bad mood right now." 2 security guards burst through the door. Without even looking, I grabbed a wineglass and smashed it at the feet of the first one. Glass shards flew upward, slicing into his calf. He froze. The second guard lunged at me. I grabbed Makoto with one hand and pulled him in front of me as a human shield. Anyone takes another step, I said. And this hand of his is finished. Makoto's face was covered in tears and snot. Don't move. Please, don't move. Supporting herself against the sofa, Willow slowly sat up. Blood streamed from her forehead past the corner of her eye. She stared at me as though she were seeing me for the first time. George, do you have any idea what you're doing? I picked up the phone from the floor. The video was still there. It had recorded me kneeling on the carpet, them forcing me to sign the divorce papers, and Willow throwing the ashtray at me. I saved the recording, emailed it to myself, and slipped the phone into my pocket. Without a trace of emotion, I replied, I do. Stepping over the broken glass, I walked up to her. I grabbed her chin and forced her to look at the agreement on the table. You coerced me into signing this. I don't think preserving evidence is unreasonable, do you? Willow's jaw trembled, but she refused to back down. You injured me. You're not getting away with this either. I let go of her. Then I picked up another phone from the floor, dialed the police, and turned on speakerphone. The operator answered. Hello, what's your emergency? I looked around at the room full of pale faces. This is private room 8 at Starlight Club. I was coerced into signing a property agreement. While defending myself, I injured several people. I'd like the police to determine whether my actions constitute excessive self-defense. I'll remain at the scene and cooperate with the investigation. Willow's face instantly lost all color. Makoto lay limp on the floor, unable to force out a single word. I placed the phone on the coffee table, sat down on the sofa, and calmly wiped the wine and blood from my hands with a tissue. Oh, and send an ambulance. No one at the doorway dared to move. I looked up and said, what are you all standing around for? If you wait until someone's dead to call, it'll be too late. Chapter 3. By the time the police sirens rose from downstairs, the air conditioning in the private room had everyone feeling chilled to the bone. A towel was wrapped around Willow's forehead. The bleeding had stopped. She sat at one end of the sofa, staring at me, her fingernails digging into her palm. Makoto cowered against the wall. His right hand was swollen purple, and he wouldn't stop crying about the pain. I sat beside the coffee table and lined up every phone in the room like mahjong tiles. Who had recorded what? Who had deleted what? Who had shared hidden footage in the group chat? I checked them one by one. Someone tried to snatch one back. I tapped the table with the jagged bottleneck and barked. You want to lose your hand? The men immediately withdrew. Grinding her teeth, Willow said, George, you think a few videos are enough to clear your name? I glanced at her and smiled. They're not. That's why I called the police. She fell silent. More of George's memories surfaced. This wasn't the first time Willow had done something like this. She had once forced him to take the blame for Makoto's drunk driving scandal by issuing a public statement claiming he had been behind the wheel. At the Lu Group's annual gala, she had made him apologize in front of everyone, claiming he had accidentally leaked confidential project files in an email, all to protect her younger brother, Oliver. She had also used the loans tied to George's father's company to keep him under her thumb, forcing him to bow his head again and again. It wasn't that George lacked pride. He simply had a noose around his neck, and the Lu family held the other end. Too bad. That trick didn't work on me. The door opened. 2 police officers entered, followed by paramedics. Willow immediately stood up, her voice trembling. Officer, he assaulted us on purpose. I want my injuries documented, and I'm pressing charges. Makoto shouted as well. He crushed my hand. One officer surveyed the shattered glass, spilled wine, and bloodstains before his gaze settled on the wound beside my ear. Who called the police? I raised my hand. I did. Tell us what happened. I handed him the phone. The full sequence is recorded here. They forced me to sign a divorce agreement, demanded that I admit to having mental illness, surrender all my property, and kneel before them. She threw an ashtray at me first. This cut on my ear came from that. Afterward, I fought back. Whether my response exceeded lawful self-defense is for your investigation. I'll fully cooperate. The officer nodded and played the recording. Willow's voice echoed through the room. Kneel, and I'll reward you with 500,000. No one spoke. The video continued. Makoto grabbing my shoulder. Willow hurling the ashtray. Glass shattering. The officer looked at Willow. You struck first. Willow pressed her lips tightly together. Makoto panicked. That was because he attacked me first. I cut in. He physically restrained me and prevented me from leaving. The officer frowned. Everyone goes to the hospital for injury examinations. After that, you'll all come to the station to give statements. Willow took a deep breath. I want to call my lawyer. That's your right. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. The moment the call connected, her voice softened. Big brother, something happened at Starlight Club. George attacked Makoto and me. Whatever the person on the other end said made her expression turn cold again. She handed me the phone. My brother wants to speak with you. I took it. A deep male voice came through the speaker. George, have you made enough of a scene tonight? George's memories identified him immediately. Diego Liu, the eldest son of the Liu family, the true power behind the Liu Group. A man whose heart was narrower than a knife's edge and colder than an accountant's ledger. Not yet, I replied. Silence lingered for 2 seconds. You injured my sister and a member of the Ito family. This isn't going to end here. I looked at Willow and smiled. Then don't end it. Diego's voice grew even colder. What do you want? I want Willow to walk away with nothing. Willow's head snapped up. A short laugh came from the other end of the line. Are you still drunk? I switched the phone to my other hand. I don't drink anything another person hands me. Diego said nothing. I continued. Your sister had someone spike my drink tonight. The plan was to make me sign the papers, film me humiliating myself, have me committed to a psychiatric hospital, and then take the shares registered under my name. Would you like me to ask the police to preserve the glass as evidence? The towel slipped from Willow's hand. Makoto's face turned deathly pale. The officer immediately turned toward the glasses on the coffee table. Which glass? I pointed to the one on the left. A faint trace of white powder still clung to the rim. I wasn't guessing. When you've spent years in the underworld, you learn to recognize tainted liquor. The numbness at the back of my tongue when I woke up. The heaviness in my stomach. This body had come dangerously close to swallowing whatever they'd mixed into that drink. Chapter 4. One of the officers put on gloves and sealed the wineglass in an evidence bag. Struggling to keep her balance, Willow gripped the edge of the sofa. George, stop making things up. I looked at her. Then why are you shaking? Her eyelashes trembled. Diego's voice came through the phone again. George, until the facts are established, don't throw around false accusations. I brought the phone closer to my mouth. Mr. Liu, you'd better hire a good lawyer, because I'll be talking to the media too. Diego's voice turned icy. You dare drag the Liu family into this? I looked down at the blood on my hands. Dark red filled the cracks between my fingers. In an even tone, I said, I don't care. I'm already drowning. So what is there left for me to be afraid of? If we're going down, I'd rather we both lose than let you in alone. With that, I hung up. As the police escorted us out of the private room, the hallway was packed with club employees, supported by a medic. Willow lowered her voice as she passed me. George, you'll come crawling back to me on your knees. I stopped walking and leaned close enough for only her to hear. Remember this. Tonight was just the appetizer. Her lips moved slightly, but she said nothing. The elevator doors slid open. My reflection appeared in the silver mirror. Blood still seeped from my ear, yet my eyes burned with an unsettling brightness. This body is weak. No muscles, no calluses, no scars across my back. Doesn't matter. I've got plenty of ways to deal with people. Anyone who stepped on my head, I'd drag them underwater with me. Anyone who tried to hang me, I'd tighten the noose around their own neck instead. Chapter 5. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the hospital corridor. Harsh white lights made the walls look cold, while faint streaks of water stretched across the tiled floor. The cut beside my ear required 3 stitches. The doctor glanced at me a few times while applying the bandage but asked no questions. Willow had 4 stitches in her forehead after the wound was cleaned. She also had a mild concussion. Makoto had a fractured right index finger along with soft tissue damage to the metacarpal. Compared to theirs, my injuries were minor. All things considered, I hadn't come out on the losing end. The lawyers arrived quickly. Representing the Wang family was my nominal older brother, Luis Wang. He wore a neatly tailored gray suit with a perfectly straight tie. The moment he walked in, he looked first at the bandage by my ear, then at the blood on the back of my hand. So, you really cracked Willow's head open. I looked up from the bench. What? Disappointed. Luis sat beside me and adjusted his glasses. I'm worried you'll get yourself killed too soon. I chuckled. I thought the Wang family only knew how to sell off their sons. He looked at me steadily. You never used to speak to me like this. Leaning against the wall, I replied. The old George is dead. Luis's brow twitched. Don't say that during your statement. I laughed. This man wasn't stupid. According to George's memories, Luis wasn't his biological brother. He was his cousin, the heir to the Wang family's main branch. When George's father's company ran into trouble, it had been Luis who proposed marrying George into the Liu family in exchange for the Liu Group's investment. His hands weren't clean, but he wasn't foolish enough to tie himself completely to the Liu family either. Luis handed me a phone. The Liu family had your old phone under surveillance. I had the SIM card replaced. I accepted it. Your price? He answered without hesitation. Don't drag the Wang family down with you. I powered on the phone. And what do I get in return? Luis stared at me for several seconds before lowering his voice. Willow holds a guarantee agreement covering 12% of your father's company's debt. The Wang family is still at her mercy. After what you did tonight, Diego will definitely play that card. I turned to him. So, if you're going to make this ugly, Make it so ugly that the Liu family won't dare make a move. Now that was music to my ears. I opened the video I'd emailed to myself, then checked the cloud backup. I need 3 things. First, who booked that private room tonight? Second, who served the wine? Third, every scandal Willow made George take the fall for over the past 3 years. Luis frowned. George. I looked at him. Me. He didn't ask another question. How long do I have? Before sunrise. Luis let out a short laugh. You think I'm a god? I stood up and patted him on the shoulder. No, you're a businessman, and businessmen hate losing money. You've already placed your bet, so stop pretending you don't have any chips on the table. The smile disappeared from Luis's face. Word by word, he said. George, I'm not your subordinate. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Then don't treat me like a disposable pawn. His eyes darkened behind his glasses. At the other end of the corridor, Willow emerged, supported by Diego. In person, Diego looked even colder than he had sounded over the phone. His suit was buttoned all the way to the collar, and a string of black prayer beads hung around his wrist. He saw me, but he didn't slow his pace. Makoto's parents had arrived as well. His mother burst into tears and pointed at me. It was him. That madman crushed my son's hand. Makoto's father jabbed a finger in my direction. His face twisted with fury. I'm going to make sure he goes to prison. Chapter 6. I didn't move. I waited until they had finished yelling. Diego walked over and stopped in front of me. George, we need to talk. I shrugged. My lawyer's here. The police are here. If you've got something to say, say it. There was barely restrained anger in Diego's eyes. What happened tonight is a fact. You injured people. If those videos go public, the Liu family will lose face, and the Wang family will go down with us. If you want a divorce, I can have Willow compensate you with 10 million. Behind him, Willow's eyes reddened. Big brother. Diego raised a hand. She fell silent immediately. I looked at the siblings and shrugged. 10 million to buy my silence, to buy your dignity, he replied. I laughed. Dignity? Do I look like someone who cares about dignity? Diego's expression hardened. I took out my phone and showed him the close-up footage of the spiked wine glass. The glass has already been sent for testing. I've also had the surveillance footage from the private room backed up. So now you have 2 options. First, pray the lab doesn't find any illegal substances. Second, find someone willing to take the fall for your sister. Willow's face turned deathly pale. George, stop framing me. I looked at her. When you pushed the glass toward me, your left ring finger touched the rim. You just had your nails done. One of the silver glitter pieces came off and stuck to the coaster. Instinctively, she looked down at her hand. So did Diego. Sure enough, a tiny patch of silver glitter was missing from her left ring fingernail. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. Relax. They might not even recover any fingerprints. Diego stared at me. What exactly do you want? I want a divorce. I want every cent I'm legally entitled to. I want Willow to apologize publicly. And I want Makoto to admit he interfered in my marriage and helped set me up. Makoto shouted from behind Diego. In your dreams. I looked past Diego at him. Your hand doesn't hurt anymore. Makoto immediately shut his mouth. The corner of his eye twitched. After several seconds of silence, Diego said, you have no evidence that Makoto interfered in your marriage. I opened another video. On the screen, Makoto had an arm around Willow's waist as he whispered into her ear. Willow, once you get him to sign this, you'll finally be free. Willow reached out to block the camera, smiling casually. Don't worry, I won't just make him sign. I'll make him kneel while he signs. The corridor fell into dead silence. Standing behind me, Luis stopped breathing for a moment. After watching the clip, Diego tightened his grip on the black prayer beads around his wrist. The beads clicked softly against one another. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. So, Mr. Liu, don't lecture me about dignity. It's the one thing I care about the least. I stepped forward until I was close enough to speak into his ear. I've met plenty of powerful men. Right before they died, they were still desperately trying to preserve their dignity. I just wonder how long yours will last. Diego slowly turned to look at me. I smiled and added, relax. This is a country governed by the rule of law. I don't kill people. His gaze turned even colder. I stepped back and smiled. After all, a man has to stay alive if he's going to repay his debts. Chapter 7. By dawn, the surveillance footage from Starlight Club had already begun circulating in private circles. It wasn't me who leaked it. One of the rich kids in the private room had accidentally posted the clip of Willow forcing me to kneel into a group chat with his drinking buddies. Someone forwarded it. Then someone else did. Before long, it had landed in the hands of gossip accounts. The video never showed me fighting back. It only captured Willow saying, kneel, and I'll reward you with 500,000. Half an hour later, the Liu Group's PR department released an official statement. They claimed the video had been taken out of context, that it was merely a marital dispute. and that Willow had suffered serious injuries and had already reported the incident to the police. The comments exploded. Some condemned the Liu family. Others, clearly paid trolls, began steering the narrative. He lived off his wife's money for 3 years. Now that he can't get anything in the divorce, he's beating women. Luis handed me a tablet. Diego's made his move. I sat at the dining table in the Wang family's old estate. A bowl of untouched porridge sat in front of me. At the head of the table sat the old patriarch of the Wang family, leaning on his cane. His face was grim. George, you've made this far bigger than it needed to be. This doesn't benefit the Wang family. I picked up the spoon and stirred the porridge twice. Grandfather, when you sent me into the Liu family back then, you said the exact same thing. It would benefit the Wang family. He slammed his cane against the floor. What kind of attitude is that? Several uncles immediately chimed in. George, the Liu family isn't someone you can afford to provoke. You're a Wang. You have to think about the bigger picture. Just endure it. It'll pass. Another added. Besides, you hit a woman. No matter what, public opinion will never be on your side. I set the spoon down. Clink. The porcelain rang softly against the bowl. Bullshit. So forcing me to kneel is acceptable, but the moment I hit back, suddenly I'm the villain. No one answered. My gaze swept across every face at the table. George had lowered his head through countless meals at this very table. While his uncles discussed business, he poured their drinks. When his cousins mocked him for marrying into another family, he didn't even dare reach for the meat dishes with his chopsticks. I wasn't him. I turned to Luis. The files. Luis slid a document folder across the table. The old patriarch frowned. What files? I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. 3 years ago, the Liu Group invested 20 million into the Wang family. The condition attached to that investment was my marriage to Willow Liu. After the wedding, the Liu Group quietly dumped 3 batches of bad debt into the Wang family supply chain. The Wang family ended up absorbing 60 million in risk for them. The old patriarch's face changed instantly. I pulled out the second document. Last year, the Liu Group's confidential project was leaked. I took the blame. In reality, it was Oliver who sent the files to a competitor. Here are the IP logs. One of my uncles slammed the table. Where did you get this? This is outrageous. I didn't even bother looking at him. Keep talking, and I'll read out the bank records showing how you embezzled company funds to buy a house for your mistress 2 years ago. His mouth snapped shut. The muscles in his face twitched. Luis lowered his head to sip his tea. The corners of his mouth were threatening to curl upward. The old patriarch stared at me. What exactly do you want? I pushed the documents to the center of the table. The Wang family has 2 choices. Keep acting like the Liu family's dog, or bite back with me. The veins on the old man's hand bulged. You think you can win? No. I stood up, but I've never waited until success was guaranteed before making my move. Footsteps echoed from outside the dining room. The family butler hurried in. Sir, the Liu family is here. Diego entered with his lawyer. Behind them stood 2 bodyguards dressed in black suits. He ignored everyone else. His eyes landed directly on me. You released the video? No. He placed a lawyer's letter on the table. The Liu Group will be suing you for intentional assault, defamation, and extortion. If you delete the videos now and sign a confidentiality agreement, we'll issue a letter of forgiveness regarding the assault charges. Several of my uncles looked visibly uncomfortable. They were afraid. I picked up the lawyer's letter. Read it once, then tore it cleanly in half. The scraps drifted onto the table. One of Diego's bodyguards stepped forward. I looked up. You planning to use force inside the Wang family estate? Diego raised a hand. The bodyguard immediately backed off. His voice remained calm. George, do you really think you're tough? I walked up to him and shrugged. Tough? Not even close. Didn't you see me kneeling last night? He stared at me. Then you should know. The higher someone rises after kneeling, the harder they fall. I leaned closer. Mr. Liu, the lab report on the spiked wineglass will be out this afternoon. His pupils contracted sharply. I continued in the same calm tone. And I also have the records proving your brother Oliver emailed confidential files to your competitor. Doesn't the Liu family love issuing public statements? I'll even help you draft the next one. The black prayer beads in Diego's hand creaked under the force of his grip. Grinding his teeth, he asked, You're declaring war on the Liu Group? I smiled. Weren't you the one who came here to deliver the declaration? Chapter 8. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number appeared. Don't trust Luis. His people got hold of the club's surveillance footage last night. I looked up at Luis. He was still sitting at the table, calmly holding his teacup, watching me through the rising steam. I locked my phone and slipped it into my palm without changing my expression. Interesting. Looks like there was a wolf hiding among the dogs. Diego turned to leave. I stopped him. Mr. Liu, when you get back, tell Willow to rewrite the divorce agreement. He stopped walking. How? I smiled. Have her write that she cheated, that she coerced me, and that she walks away with nothing. Diego looked back at me. His gaze was as sharp as a blade. She'll never sign it. I grinned. Then I'll make her. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, the lab report came back. The wine glass tested positive for zolpidem. The dosage wasn't fatal, but it was more than enough to leave someone drowsy and mentally impaired. The police officially opened an investigation. The Liu family's PR team immediately changed its story. They now claimed a club waiter had acted on his own, and that Willow had known nothing about it. The club manager was pushed out as the scapegoat. On the news, I watched him bow his head in apology. A cup of tea sat cold beside my hand. Across from me, Luis said. Diego moved fast. That waiter suddenly received $200,000. The money came through an outsourcing company after being routed through 3 different accounts. Without looking up, I said, find out who actually controls the outsourcing company. I already checked. The registered owner is a 70-year-old man. Then find who's behind him. Luis rubbed his forehead. You really do think I'm a god? I looked straight at him. You took the club's surveillance footage last night. His fingers froze. The room fell silent. Outside, tires rolled over the stone pavement with a soft scraping sound. Luis finally looked up. Who told you? I only asked whether you did. He slowly set down his teacup. I did. I stood up, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. The teacup overturned. Tea spilled over the edge of the table. Luis hit the wall with a muffled grunt. His glasses slid crookedly down his nose. The bodyguards at the door moved to come in. I glanced at them. Out. Both men looked toward Luis. He forced out a single word through clenched teeth. Out. The door closed. I stared at him. Give it to me. His Adam's apple bobbed. I took it, because I was afraid the Liu family would destroy it first. Cut the crap. I tightened my grip. Were you the one who leaked the video? Did you edit it? His breathing grew heavier. I slammed my fist into the wall beside his face. The skin across my knuckles split open, and a chunk of plaster broke away. I'll ask one last time. Where's the original footage? Luis closed his eyes briefly. In the safe. The password. Your birthday. I laughed. You really know how to play the caring brother. Looking at me, his voice turned hoarse. I never tried to hurt you. The original footage shows the entire fight. If all of it had been released, you'd be in trouble too, I replied. Whether it gets released, and how it gets released, is my decision, not yours. I let him go, straightening his glasses. He looked at me with a complicated expression. George, you're like a completely different person. I wiped the blood from my knuckles. Then be grateful. The new one is still willing to talk to you. The original surveillance footage was stored on a hard drive inside the safe. I plugged it into the computer. The recording began the moment I entered the private room. George being forced to drink. George being forced to kneel. Makoto sliding the divorce agreement across the table. Willow lighting her cigarette. I rewound another 10 minutes. A waiter entered carrying the wine. Makoto stood up, with his back to the camera. He paused in front of my glass. For exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That was enough. I isolated the clip and zoomed in. From inside his sleeve, a tiny packet of white powder slipped into his hand. Standing behind me, Luis nodded. That proves Makoto did it. I shook my head. Not enough. Still not enough. We still don't have footage of Willow directly drugging me. Luis frowned. She can simply claim she didn't know. I nodded. Exactly. So we'll make Makoto Ito and Willow tear each other apart. Chapter 9. That night, I went to Ito Hospital. Makoto was staying in a VIP ward. 2 bodyguards stood outside the door. I didn't use the door. There was a fire escape behind the building. And outside the 8th floor window was a maintenance platform. George's body was weak. By the time I climbed up, every muscle in my arms felt like it was tearing apart. The wind poured down my collar. Cold sweat clung to my back. I pushed open a window that hadn't been latched properly. Makoto was lying in bed, talking on the phone. Willow, you have to protect me. You're the one who told me to prepare the drug. Now that everything's gone wrong, you expect me to take all the blame. I stayed outside the window. The voice recorder on my phone was already running. Willow's voice came through the speaker. It wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. I only told you to scare him. I never told you to drug him. Makoto cursed under his breath. Oh, cut the crap. You're the one who said we'd film him after he signed the papers, so he'd never be able to recover for the rest of his life. Willow was silent for a second. Makoto, calm down. My brother will handle this. Handle my ass. My hand's broken. The whole internet's calling me a homewrecker. And now you're trying to distance yourself from me. Willow's voice suddenly turned sharp. You never should have touched that glass. Makoto shouted back. Without your approval, do you think I would have dared? Standing outside the window, I felt the wind drying out my eyes. The recording timer reached 2 minutes and 10 seconds. That was enough. Just as I was about to leave, the ward door suddenly opened. A nurse's aide pushed a medical cart inside. She looked toward the window, and her eyes widened. Without hesitation, I swung myself through the window into the room. Makoto turned around. The color instantly drained from his face. George. I shut the window behind me and dusted off my hands. Smiling, I said. Sounds like you've been having quite the conversation. He reached for the nurse call button. I grabbed an apple from the bedside table and shoved it into his mouth. At the same time, I pressed down on his injured hand. His whole body jerked upward. Tears burst from his eyes instantly. MMPH. The nurse's aide opened her mouth to scream. One chop to the neck. She collapsed unconscious. I held up my phone. The screen still showed recording. Smiling, I asked. What do you think? If I hand this recording over to the police, do you think Willow will still save you? Makoto's eyes were bloodshot. The apple still stuffed in his mouth. I pulled it out. He gasped for air. What do you want? I leaned over him. Tomorrow morning, you're going to release a public statement. You'll admit you interfered in our marriage. You'll admit you conspired with Willow to force me into signing the agreement. You'll admit you were the one who drugged the wine, and that she knew about it. He shook his head frantically. No, I can't. If my father finds out, he'll beat me to death. I pressed down on his injured hand again. Makoto, I think you've misunderstood. I'm not negotiating with you. I'm informing you. His entire body trembled. Footsteps echoed from outside the room. The bodyguards were returning. I let him go and opened the window. Before climbing out, I looked back at him. Makoto, you know better than anyone. Willow will abandon you. Diego will abandon you. And in the end, even the Ito family will abandon you. Chapter 10. Makoto never released the statement. That was my mistake. I never imagined Makoto Ito could be this much of a coward. The next morning, the Ito family issued a lawyer's letter first, claiming that Makoto and Willow were nothing more than longtime friends. They accused me of malicious defamation and demanded that all related content be removed from the internet. Half an hour later, the Lu group reposted it. The two families joined forces. Once again, they dumped all the blame onto me. Soon, anonymous posts began appearing online. They claimed that during my 3 years in the Lu family, everything I ate, wore, and spent came from my wife, that I had secretly accumulated gambling debts, that I had suffered from chronic mental illness. That was why I had attacked people during the divorce. Attached was a photo of George standing outside the psychiatry department at a hospital. I stared at that picture for a long time. George hadn't been mentally ill. He had been driven to the point where he couldn't sleep night after night. In the end, he had gone to see a psychiatrist on his own. And now, they were using even that against him. Luis looked at my expression but said nothing. I picked up the car keys. We're going to the Lu group. Right now. Right now. The Lu group headquarters stood in the center of the city. Sunlight reflected off its glass curtain walls. Reporters had already crowded the entrance. The moment I got out of the car, flashes exploded around me. Mr. Wang, is it true that you suffer from mental illness? Did you attack Ms. Lu because you failed to extort money from her during the divorce? You married into the Lu family for 3 years. Is it true you never had any income of your own? Luis's bodyguards tried to block them. I raised a hand. Stand down. I walked straight toward the cameras. Then I tore the bandage from my ear, exposing the stitches and the wound beneath. Take a good look. Willow did this. She threw an ashtray at me. The reporters erupted into noise. I took out my tablet and played the video from the private room. Willow's voice echoed through the loudspeakers outside the building. Kneel, and I'll reward you with 500,000. The crowd fell silent for a second. Then it exploded. Security guards from the Lu group rushed outside. Move back. No interviews are allowed here. I handed my tablet to the nearest reporter. Take it. Copy whatever you want. A security guard reached out to grab it. I caught his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and pinned him to the ground. Another guard charged toward me. I sidestepped him and swept his legs out from under him. I didn't hit them hard. After all, there were cameras everywhere. Facing the reporters, I said, I think I need to clarify something. The Lu family claims I have a history of mental illness. That is a complete fabrication. And as a legally competent adult, I will not accept a private settlement. I will not accept mediation. And I certainly won't accept hush money. The doors of the Lu group building opened. Willow strode out. She wore sunglasses. A bandage covered her forehead. Behind her came lawyers and bodyguards. George, have you caused enough trouble yet? I looked at her. Not even close. She pulled off her sunglasses. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Her lips were completely drained of color. Anger filled her voice. What exactly are you trying to force me into? I laughed. You're asking me. I took back the tablet and opened another video. It was footage from the Lu group's annual gala 6 months earlier. On stage, Willow declared that the project's confidential leak had been caused by George's negligence. She announced that the Lu group would hold him fully responsible. People in the audience called him trash. Some even threw wine at him. George stood there with his head lowered. His white shirt was soaked. His fingers gripped the microphone so tightly they turned pale. Yet he couldn't say a single word. I looked up at Willow. So tell me, who was forcing whom? Her lips parted. A reporter immediately thrust a microphone toward her. Ms. Liu, is this video authentic? Ms. Liu, was the project leak really caused by Mr. Wang? Willow's breathing became uneven. She looked at me. Her voice dropped so low that only I could hear it. George, please don't do this. I took one step toward her. Instinctively, she took one step back. Every camera caught it. Looking down at her, I asked, so, now you know what fear feels like. Her sunglasses slipped from her hand. They hit the ground. The lenses shattered. I'm not afraid. Then stop shaking. She forced herself to stand still. Her whole body tensed. I leaned in close. Willow, you seemed pretty happy watching me kneel before. She pressed her lips together. I raised my hand and pointed at the steps leading into the Liu Group headquarters. Now, it's your turn. Kneel. Chapter 11. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Willow's face turned deathly pale. Her lawyer hurriedly stepped forward. Mr. Wang, this is public humiliation. I looked straight into the cameras. When she told me to kneel, it was called a marital dispute. But when I tell her to kneel, suddenly it's public humiliation. The reporters pushed their cameras even closer. Willow clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. Her eyes reddened, not with remorse, but with hatred born from having her pride trampled. George, I'm not kneeling. I nodded. Fine. Then I turned to the reporters. Let's watch the next clip. A phone recording between Makoto and Willow began playing on the tablet. Makoto's voice came through. You were the one who said to wait until he signed the papers before filming the video. You wanted to ruin him for the rest of his life. Would I have dared do it without your approval? Willow lunged at the tablet. I caught her wrist. I didn't use much force. I simply kept her half a step away. Her fingertips were only inches from the screen. Yet she couldn't reach it no matter how hard she tried. The reporters completely erupted, firing question after question. Liu Group security guards desperately tried to hold back the crowd, but they couldn't stop the flood of reporters. Even passers-by gathered around. Willow stared at me. The arrogance she used to wear like a crown was gone from her eyes. All that remained was chaos, panic, and the realization that the blade she had sharpened with her own hands had finally turned and stabbed her instead. I let go of her wrist. Willow, it's fine if you won't kneel today. I put the tablet away. You'll have plenty of chances to kneel and cry in the future. That evening, the police summoned Makoto Ito for questioning. Reporters packed the entrance to the Ito residence. Makoto came out wearing a mask, his right arm wrapped in a bandage, keeping his head down as he hurried toward the car. Someone asked if he had been the other man. He didn't answer. Someone else asked whether drugging George had been Willow's idea. He paused for the briefest moment before his father shoved him into the car. That split-second reaction was enough to fuel the internet's imagination for the next 3 days. Liu Group stock opened lower the next morning. Business partners sent urgent letters overnight asking about the risks. Diego was too busy putting out fires to keep playing the enlightened saint. But he wasn't idle. At 10 that night, several banks that had worked with George's father's company for years suddenly sent notices at the same time. Citing an increased guarantee risk rating, they demanded that the company provide additional collateral within a specified deadline. The Wang family estate was brightly lit. Several uncles were arguing around old Master Wang. I told you from the start to keep George from pulling something like this. The Liu family is trying to cut off our financing. Make him apologize. Now, the moment I walked through the door, a teacup shattered at my feet. Old Master Wang's face was ashen. Are you satisfied now? I looked at the broken pieces and let out a cold laugh. The Liu family's already holding a knife to our throats. And instead of figuring out how to fight back, you're busy turning your knives on your own family. One of my uncles stormed over and jabbed a finger at my face. If it weren't for you, the Wang family would have never ended up like this. I grabbed his finger and forced it downward. His knees buckled, and he cried out in pain. Word by word, I said. Point at me one more time. His face twisted from the pain. Old Master Wang slammed the table. George, let him go. I released him, clutching his hand. My uncle stumbled backward, cursing non-stop. Madman, you're completely insane. I turned to Luis. Which bank is leading this? Luis handed me a folder. Bema Bank. The vice president is Martin. He's very close to Diego. I flipped through a few pages. His son received money from one of Liu Group's investment funds last year. Luis nodded. 30 million. He invested it in a shell tech company. I smiled. Organize all the materials and send them straight to the regulator's mailbox. Luis paused. Right now. Right now. Old Master Wang frowned. You're going to drag them into this too. I looked him in the eye. He reached for my throat first. And you expect me to spare him? No one spoke. Luis said quietly. The chain of evidence isn't complete. At most, we can make his life miserable. It probably won't be enough to bring him down. That's enough, I said. Chapter 12. I sat down on the sofa and said, word by word. I don't need to bring him down. I just need to make sure he doesn't dare sign Diego's early loan recall order. Luis looked at me differently. In the original George's memories, family power struggles were like a game of chess. Everyone cared about rules, decorum, and leaving each other a way out. But I used to scrape out a living on the docks. There was no room for all that. If your enemy dared to pull a knife, you broke the hand holding it. At 1 a.m, word spread inside Bema Bank that Vice President Martin had been called in for questioning. By 2 o'clock, the loan recall notice had been put on hold. The way the Wong family looked at me changed. Their fear was now mixed with a hint of greed. They had realized this mad dog could bite. Now they wanted to put him on a leash. Old Master Wong cleared his throat. George, you did well this time. I looked up at him. So you've got two faces too, Old Master. Save the compliments. They don't sound sincere. He was left speechless. Luis handed me his phone. Willow's calling. Her name flashed across the screen. I answered and turned on speakerphone. Her voice was terribly hoarse. George, let's meet. I said nothing. She continued. I know you hate me, but things have gone too far. This isn't good for either of us. Let's talk. Whatever conditions you have. I'm willing to make concessions. I smiled. What kind of concessions? She hesitated before answering. I can give you money. We can negotiate shares too. What if I want you to kneel in public and apologize? Silence. I waited. A few seconds later, she said, George Wong, don't force me to tear off all pretenses. I glanced around at the Wong family gathered in the room. Weren't you already stripped of your dignity a long time ago? The sound of a glass shattering came from the other end. She lowered her voice. You really won't stop until I kneel, will you? No. I leaned back against the sofa. I want you to repay every single humiliation you put me through. The same way. In front of everyone. Her voice trembled. You weren't like this before. I closed my eyes. The image of the original George kneeling in that private room flashed through my mind. Then another. Him sitting alone on the bathroom floor in the middle of the night, burying his face in his knees while the faucet dripped until dawn. I opened my eyes. The George you knew, you people already killed him. Willow didn't say another word. All that remained on the other end was the sound of her breathing. I hung up. The entire Wong family fell into dead silence. Luis finally asked, You're really not leaving even a shred of your old feelings behind? I looked at him. Old feelings. I tossed the phone back onto the table. You expect a dead man to honor old feelings? Aren't you afraid he'll come knocking on your door as a ghost in the middle of the night? Chapter 13. Willow came anyway. The next afternoon, she arrived alone at the Wong family estate. No lawyer, no bodyguards. She wore a light-colored trench coat and looked noticeably thinner. As she stood at the entrance, the wind blew a strand of hair across her lips. She brushed it away with trembling fingers. The entire Wong family was in the living room. When she saw me, she stopped. I sat on the sofa and nodded toward her. Go ahead. She glanced at everyone else. I'd like to speak with you alone. I smiled. When you made me kneel, you didn't clear the room. The composure she had been forcing herself to maintain finally cracked. Old Master Wong spoke up. Willow, have a seat. She didn't sit. Instead, she took a document out of her bag. This is a new divorce agreement. I'm willing to pay you $30 million in compensation. The dividends from the Lu Group project will be settled according to our marital agreement. I'll also withdraw the guarantee on your father's company. Several of the Wong family's uncles immediately lit up at the offer. I didn't even reach for the document. Public apology. Her fingers tightened around the papers. I can issue a statement saying the breakdown of our marriage was the responsibility of both sides. I picked up the ashtray on the coffee table and slowly turned it in my hand. The moment she saw it, her shoulders flinched. I smiled. Both sides. She bit her lip. George, Lu Group has over 10,000 employees. If I publicly admit to cheating, it'll be the same as nailing the entire Lu family to a pillar of shame. I looked at her. Then why are you here? Her eyes filled with tears. I'm here to beg you. The living room fell silent. Willow lowered her head and spoke softly. I know I treated you badly before. I admit I went too far. I got used to you giving in to me. I got used to you never fighting back. So I just kept pushing further and further. I looked at the top of her head. It sounded like she was admitting her mistakes, but she never actually said what those mistakes were. She only admitted that she'd gone too far. She never mentioned the pain the original George had endured. All she wanted was to cut her losses. I stood up and walked over to her. She looked up at me, her tear-filled eyes shimmering as her fingers gripped the edge of the agreement. George, we can't start over, but at least don't let this end with both of us destroying each other. I reached out and took the agreement. She let out a quiet sigh of relief. The next second, I tore it cleanly in half. The ripping sound echoed sharply through the living room. Willow froze. I tossed the shredded papers into the trash. The way you're begging. It's all wrong. Her face gradually turned pale. Old Master Wong frowned. George, don't go too far. I turned to him. Shut the hell up. The old man shot to his feet in fury. Luis immediately grabbed his arm to stop him. I looked back at Willow. You want to negotiate? Fine. I pointed toward the courtyard outside. Kneel in the yard for 30 minutes. Then record your public apology. Her eyes widened. You want me to kneel here at the Wong family estate? I smiled. What? Feeling wronged. She drew a sharp breath. George, don't push this too far. The smile disappeared from my face. Private room 8 at Starlight Club. 16 people. 13 phones recording. When you made me kneel, did it ever cross your mind not to push things too far? Her lips trembled. That's different. The moment those words left her mouth, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. I stared at her. Different how? She couldn't answer. Chapter 14. I took half a step toward her. Because I was the live-in son-in-law. Because I depended on the Liu family. Because my father's company lived or died at the Liu family's mercy. So you thought I was nothing but the Liu family's dog. You thought I'd do whatever you ordered. You thought you were above me. So in your mind, it was acceptable for me to kneel, but not for you. Tears fell from Willow's eyes, splashing onto the torn pages of the agreement. She shook her head. That's not what I meant. No, that's exactly what you meant. I picked up another folder from the coffee table and threw it at her feet. These are all the things I took the blame for over the past 3 years. The drunk driving statement, the project leak, the client kickbacks, and cleaning up Oliver's mess. You knew he was innocent every single time. The tears on her face vanished instantly. Her whole body began trembling uncontrollably, because the file contained signatures, audio recordings, emails. She finally stopped pretending to be the victim. She was scared. Willow looked at me. Where did you get all this? That's none of your business. She bent down to pick up the documents. I stepped on the edge of the file. Kneel, or get out. She froze. A few seconds later, she slowly bent her knees. A chorus of gasps filled the Wong family's living room. Just as her knees were about to touch the carpet, her phone rang. She stopped immediately and fumbled to take it out. The screen showed Diego. She answered. Brother. Diego's voice came through the speaker. Stand up. Don't kneel. Willow looked up at me. Hope returned to her eyes as though she'd grabbed hold of a lifeline. Diego continued. George, I can't give you what you're asking for, but I have another gift prepared for you. I took the phone from Willow. Talk, he replied. Your father's car accident wasn't an accident. I froze for a brief moment. In the original George's memories, it was after his father's car accident that the company collapsed, forcing George into the marriage alliance. Diego lowered his voice. If you want to know who did it, meet me at the Old Harbor warehouse tonight at 8. Come alone. The call ended. Willow stood in front of me, tears still clinging to her chin. It was as if she'd suddenly come back to life. George, I didn't know anything about this. I looked her straight in the eyes. You'd better be telling the truth. Chapter 15. The Old Harbor warehouse stood beside an abandoned dock. The rusted iron gate had turned almost black, while the stench of seawater mixed with diesel fumes seeped into my lungs. I walked in alone. Inside the massive warehouse, only 2 dim lights were on. They barely illuminated the ground beneath my feet, leaving everything else swallowed by darkness. A cold wind whistled through the gaps between old shipping containers, making the sheet metal rattle softly. Diego stood beneath one of the lights. 4 men stood behind him. Willow wasn't there. I glanced at the 4 men. Their stances gave them away. They weren't ordinary bodyguards. Their hands rested beneath their jackets, shoulders slightly lowered. They were trained fighters. Rolling his prayer beads through his fingers, Diego said. You actually came. I took off my jacket and tossed it onto a nearby wooden crate. Where's the evidence? He raised a hand. One of the men tossed over a manila envelope. It landed at my feet. I didn't pick it up. Diego smiled. What's wrong? Scared. I smiled back. Stupid question. You brought 4 men. I came alone. So tell me, which one of us is actually scared? The smile faded from his face. I've looked into you, George. You've never been able to fight. You've never seriously hurt anyone. You've never even been in a real fight. And you've never had combat training. But the way you've been acting these past few days doesn't match the men in those records. I rolled my wrists. So, he stared at me. So I want to see who you really are. I let out a chuckle. Ask your sister. Didn't she already tell you last night? I'm crazy. Diego took half a step back. Do it. All 4 men charged at me at once. The first man whipped out a telescopic baton from beneath his jacket and swung it hard at my shoulder. I sidestepped the strike, closed the distance, and drove my elbow into his ribs. He grunted. The strength instantly drained from his body. I seized his wrist, tore the baton from his hand, and smashed it into the back of his knee. Bang. His legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees on the spot. The second man rushed in from the side. His punch brushed past my ear. I grabbed his wrist, twisted with his momentum, and hurled him straight into a shipping container. Thud. The steel wall shook violently, sending layers of dust raining down. The third man was the most ruthless. A flash of cold steel. A blade slid from his sleeve and lunged toward my abdomen. I didn't retreat. I stepped forward instead. The knife sliced through my shirt. The icy edge skimmed across my skin. I caught his wrist and bent it sharply backward. Clang. The blade hit the floor. A heartbeat later, my kick slammed into his chest. He flew backward, crashed into a stack of wooden crates, and curled up on the ground, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Then, without warning, something tightened around my neck. The fourth man had looped a rope over my throat from behind and yanked it tight. My breathing stopped instantly. Bright sparks exploded across my vision. I grabbed the rope with both hands, stomped hard on his foot, then threw my head backward into his nose. Crack! A scream erupted behind me. The rope loosened. I spun around, snatched the rope away, looped it around his neck instead, pinned the back of his head, and slammed his face into the ground. Once, twice. Silence filled the warehouse. He lay motionless on the floor. Don't get the wrong idea. He had only passed out. I took a deep breath. The taste of blood filled my mouth. Diego still stood beneath the light. Even the prayer beads in his hand had stopped moving. For the first time, genuine fear appeared on his face. I picked up the telescopic baton from the ground and walked toward him one step at a time. Backing away, he said, "George, if you stop now, it's not too late." I tapped the baton against the concrete. Clang, clang. Each metallic knock echoed through the warehouse. The evidence. He glanced at the paper bag by his feet. Inside are the bank records of the driver who caused the crash. Back then, someone transferred $5 million to his family. I bent down and picked up the envelope. At that exact moment, one of the lights overhead suddenly went out. Chapter 16. Footsteps echoed from a corner of the warehouse. I turned my head. Luis stepped out of the shadows, a car key dangling from his hand. I looked at him. "You're working with him." Diego grinned smugly. "George, did you really think anyone in the Wong family wanted you to win?" Luis ignored Diego and looked directly at me. "Your father's car accident wasn't the Liu family's doing." I tightened my grip on the paper bag. Luis continued. "It was the Wong family." A gust of wind slipped through the warehouse doors, making the paper bag rustle loudly. I stared at him. "Explain." Luis's voice was low. "Your father discovered that the Wong family's main branch had been cooking the books. He was going to hand the evidence over to the regulators. Old Master Wong couldn't stop him. After the crash, the evidence disappeared, and the Liu family seized the opportunity to force the Wong family into a marriage alliance." Diego picked up where he left off. "You've been hating the wrong people." I looked at him coldly. "Save the whitewashing." He shrugged. "The Liu family did humiliate you, but we didn't kill your father." I turned back to Luis. "So why are you here tonight? To save me, or to silence me?" Luis tossed the car keys to me. "There's a car waiting outside. The evidence is real. It contains the payment records to the driver's family, and the Wong family's internal accounts. That's all I can give you." I caught the keys. "Why?" Luis fell silent for a moment. "Because my father also died in that storm." The warehouse fell silent except for the rattling sheet metal. Diego's expression changed. He clearly hadn't expected Luis to turn against him. The next second, police sirens wailed outside. Diego spun around. Luis said calmly, "I called the police." Diego's eyes turned vicious. "Luis." Luis stepped back until he was standing beside me. "Mr. Liu, hiring people to assault someone is enough to keep you busy for a while." Diego Liu glared at us. The string of prayer beads in his hand suddenly snapped. Black beads scattered across the floor, bouncing in every direction. I walked toward him with the baton raised. Then, instead of hitting him, I smashed it into the wooden crate beside him. Bang. Startled, he instinctively stumbled backward. His foot landed on the scattered beads. He slipped and crashed to the floor. I crouched down and looked at him, scared. His face twisted for a split second. The police rushed into the warehouse. I tossed the baton aside and raised both hands. "I'll cooperate with the investigation." Diego stared at me, grinding his teeth so hard they clicked. I smiled at him. "Mr. Liu, don't expect to find another fall guy this time." The Old Harbor warehouse incident quickly exploded into the headlines. Diego had invited me to a meeting, but brought 4 hired thugs with him. Various weapons and knives were found scattered around the scene. When the police arrived, all 4 attackers were injured. The warehouse surveillance footage, the emergency call records, and Luis's testimony all matched my account. I was injured as well. There were ligature marks around my neck, a cut along my waist, and scrapes across the back of my hand. This time, the Liu family couldn't simply sweep everything under the rug. After being placed under administrative detention, Diego Liu was released on bail while awaiting further investigation on suspicion of inciting intentional assault. 2 of the 4 hired thugs had prior criminal records. They admitted they had been paid only to intimidate someone and claimed they didn't know who had arranged the job. The money had been transferred through a shell company. Tracing that shell company led investigators to one of Lu Group's vice presidents. Once again, Diego was trying to find someone else to take the fall, but the Lu family's wall was already cracking from every side. Makoto was the first to break. During his second police interview, he completely turned on Willow. The drugging, the coercion, the secretly recorded videos. He confessed to everything. The reason was simple. The Ito family wanted to protect Ito Corporation. They were preparing to send him overseas until the scandal blew over. While forcing him to publicly claim that everything that had happened was his own personal doing, he realized he had become the sacrificial lamb. And when a cornered dog has nothing left to lose, it bites. Chapter 17. The day Willow was summoned for questioning. I sat in my car and watched her walk out of the Lu Group headquarters. She was dressed in a black business suit. Her face looked exhausted, and a faint scar was visible near her temple. Reporters immediately surrounded her. MS. Lu, Makoto claims you knew about the drugging. Is that true? Did you repeatedly coerce your ex-husband? How do you plan to handle your divorce with Mr. Wong? Keeping her head down, Willow walked toward her car under the protection of her bodyguards. Then someone shouted, "Willow, when you made George kneel, did you ever think you'd end up like this?" She stopped. From inside my car, I watched her through the window. As if she had heard my name, she slowly raised her head and searched the crowd. Finally, she spotted my car. She pushed past her bodyguards and walked toward me. Luis, sitting in the driver's seat, asked quietly, "Should I drive away?" "No." Willow stopped beside my window and knocked softly. I lowered it. The outside noise instantly flooded into the car. The reporters shouting, camera shutters clicking, car horns blaring from the street. Everything blended into one chaotic roar. Looking at me with reddened eyes, Willow said, "George, I just finished giving my statement." I remained silent. She clasped her hands tightly in front of her. I admitted it. I admitted that I knew Makoto was going to drug your drink that night. And I admitted I forced you to sign the agreement. Every camera turned toward us. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. I did a lot of terrible things. I took your patience for granted. I cut off every path you had left. And I even used your father's company to force you into submission. She took a deep breath. Then, she slowly bent her knees. The crowd exploded. Willow knelt beside my car as though every last bit of strength had finally left her. Her back gradually bent forward. Her shoulders completely collapsed. "I'm sorry." The sound of camera shutters became a non-stop storm. Still kneeling, Willow looked up at me as tears streamed down her face. "George, I know you'll never forgive me." Her voice shook. "But do we really have to destroy each other like this?" I looked down at her. Back then, the original George had knelt before her in that private room. She hadn't cared. At the company's annual banquet, he had wine thrown in his face in front of everyone. She had simply watched. Even in the hospital corridor, she had been convinced that sooner or later, he would come back and kneel before her again. Now, she was finally the one kneeling. Too bad. It was too late. The person who should have received this apology was already dead. I took a document from Luis and held it out to her. "Sign it." Willow lowered her head. It was a divorce agreement. The terms were simple and straightforward. She acknowledged serious marital misconduct, agreed to financial compensation, withdrew every restriction placed on my father's company, and promised to cooperate in correcting every false public statement made about me over the past 3 years. She reached out for the papers. Her fingers trembled so badly she could barely hold them. "If I sign, will you let Lu Group go?" I smiled. "You're still trying to negotiate." The last trace of color drained from her face. I pulled the agreement back and started raising the window. "I'll sign." She hurriedly stopped me. Taking the pen, she signed the agreement against the edge of the car window. The pen scratched across the paper. Her final stroke came out badly crooked. She handed the agreement back to me. Her vision blurred with tears. "George, I truly regret everything." My eyes fell on the hand holding the agreement. That was the same hand that had thrown the divorce papers into the original George's face, that had hurled an ashtray at me, that had personally pushed the drugged glass of wine toward me. I took the agreement and said calmly, "Your regret is your business. Whether I forgive you is mine." She stared at me blankly. The last glimmer of hope in her eyes slowly faded away. I raised the window. The glass slowly sealed shut, shutting her out. She remained kneeling where she was. Her lips moved slightly, as though she were calling my name. I didn't respond. As Luis drove the car through the crowd, I looked into the rearview mirror. Willow was surrounded by reporters. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She had barely gotten halfway up before collapsing back onto the ground. There were so many people around her, yet not a single one reached out to help her. Chapter 18. The Wong family's books were even dirtier than the Lu family's. Among the files Luis gave me were records showing that 10 years earlier, the Wong family's main branch had inflated profits, fabricated contracts, and evaded taxes. There was also half of an old audio recording left behind by the original George's father before the car accident. In the recording, George's father's voice was hoarse. "Dad, if we keep cooking the books like this, something will eventually go wrong." A brief silence followed. Then an elderly voice spoke. "If you hand those materials over, are you trying to destroy the Wong family?" George's father replied, "I'm trying to save the Wong family." The next second, the sharp sound of a teacup shattering rang out. "If you dare hand over those materials, then I'll no longer have a son." The recording ended abruptly. I sat alone in the study and listened to it 3 times. Just as the third playback ended, the study door was pushed open. Old Master Wong stood in the doorway with his cane. Behind him were his assistant and caregiver. The moment he saw the documents spread across my desk, his expression darkened. "Luis gave those to you." I turned off the recorder. "Was it you?" He didn't answer. He simply stared at the recorder. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "No, the car accident wasn't my doing." I looked him in the eye. "But you've always known who did it." His lips tightened. The Wong family couldn't afford to fall back then. I slowly rose to my feet. "So my father had to die." Old Master Wong slammed his cane against the floor. "Your father was a Wong too. If he'd handed over those materials, the entire Wong family would have been finished. So many businesses, so many employees. Were they all supposed to be buried with him?" I walked over until I was standing right in front of him. "He died, and the Wong family survived. Then you turned around and sent his only son into the Liu family, so he could spend his life as the Liu family's dog." Old Master Wong's face gradually turned ashen. Through gritted teeth, he said, "George Wong, don't forget, you carry the Wong name too." I laughed. "And what has that name ever given me?" "Nothing but bad luck." He raised his hand to slap me. I caught his wrist. His skin was loose with age. His wrist bones were so thin they pressed against my palm. I barely used any force, yet he still gasped in pain. You wouldn't dare hit me." I looked at him calmly. "You're too old. You wouldn't survive it." A trace of relief flickered across his eyes, as though he believed blood ties still meant something to me. Then I spoke again. "So instead, I'm sending you to prison." His eyes flew wide open. "What did you say?" I picked up the file. "Tax evasion, fraudulent contracts, concealing evidence related to a major incident. Any one of those is enough to give you a new place to spend the rest of your life." His breathing suddenly grew ragged. "Luis." He roared toward the door. Luis quickly entered the study. Old Master Wong raised his cane toward him. His arm trembled violently. "You too, are you turning against me?" Luis walked to my side. "Grandpa, if the Wong family doesn't clean up its books now, these rotten accounts will destroy it sooner or later." Old Master Wong's chest rose and fell heavily. "I'm your grandfather." Luis's eyes reddened. Speaking one word at a time, he said, "My father was your son too." Those words seemed to choke the life out of the old man. He looked at Luis, then at me. For a long time, he couldn't say a word. I picked up the document case. "Tomorrow morning, these materials will be delivered to the lawyers, the tax authorities, and the financial regulators. Tonight, you can call in favors, you can move your assets, you can even fake an illness and check yourself into a hospital." I stopped at the doorway. "The original George might have spared you because your family. He might even have taken care of you until the day you died, but I won't." The cane slipped from Old Master Wong's hand and clattered onto the floor. He staggered backward. The caregiver rushed forward to catch him. His lips moved over and over, repeating the same words. "Rebellion. They've all turned against me." Luis bent down and picked up the cane. He didn't hand it back. Instead, he quietly leaned it against the wall. "Grandpa, it's time to pay the debts you owe." Chapter 19. The following morning, Wong Corporation released an emergency announcement, voluntarily disclosing historical financial irregularities. The regulators immediately opened a formal investigation. Tax authorities and financial crime investigators moved into the company. Several of the Wong family's senior relatives were taken in for questioning. Others were barred from leaving the country. George's father's car accident was officially reopened. The driver had long since died of illness, but the bank records remained. Shortly after the accident, his wife had received $5 million and used it to purchase a house in full. The money had been routed through several private accounts before ultimately leading to a long-defunct project company owned by Wong Corporation. The actual controller of that company was Old Master Wong's eldest son. When Luis heard the results in the conference room, he sat there for a very long time. He didn't cry. He simply took off his glasses and pressed hard against the bridge of his nose. I slid my pack of cigarettes toward him. He shook his head. "After my father died, I always thought the Liu family had driven him to his death. And now you know." He nodded. "It was the Wong family that rotted first." Outside, the sky grew darker. Our reflections appeared side by side in the glass. Luis asked, "What are you going to do next?" I looked at the 3 files lying on the table. Willow's divorce agreement, the investigation materials on the Liu family, and the Wang family's old accounts. Finish it. Luis looked up. I placed a cigarette between my lips without lighting it. Not a single one of them gets to walk away with their dignity intact. The day of the trial, the sky was overcast. The courthouse was packed. Willow was there. So was Makoto. Neither looked any better than the other. Makoto was prosecuted in a separate case for illegally possessing and using controlled psychiatric drugs, violating another person's rights, and participating in coercion to force the signing of an agreement. Since he hadn't caused serious bodily harm and had voluntarily confessed, he ultimately received a suspended sentence along with a fine. The Ito family made no attempt to protect him. His father slapped him across the face in public and threw him out of the family. His shares and bank accounts were also frozen as part of other investigations. His injured right hand had been saved, but it was left with permanent damage. It shook uncontrollably whenever he tried to hold a pen. In the courthouse hallway, he spotted me from a distance. He froze. I walked toward him, with his back pressed against the wall. His lips trembled uncontrollably. George, I did everything you told me. I've already paid the price. My eyes fell on his still trembling right hand. Not enough. Tears instantly poured from his eyes. My father abandoned me. My family abandoned me. I have nothing left. I leaned closer. You've still got one worthless life. His lips quivered in terror. I smiled and lightly patted his cheek. Relax. This is a country ruled by law. I'm not going to touch you. He slowly opened his bloodshot eyes. From now on, every morning when you wake up and see that ruined hand, you'll remember exactly how you ended up like this. That's enough. Makoto slowly slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. All he could do was repeat the same words over and over. I was wrong. I was really wrong. At the other end of the hallway, Willow stood alone by the window. She looked even thinner than the last time I'd seen her. Her black coat hung loosely from her frame. In her hand, she tightly clutched a silver bracelet. It was the one the original George had once given her. A simple silver bead bracelet with her initials engraved on the center charm. It hadn't cost much, but the original George had bought it with what little savings he had. After accepting it back then, she had casually tossed it into a drawer. Now she had taken it out again, but it was already too late. Chapter 20. Willow walked over to me. George. I stopped. She opened her palm and held out the bracelet. I kept this all along. I only glanced at it once. Throw it away. Her hand froze in midair. After a long silence, she finally said, I know. I don't have the right to use this to say anything. I just found it again later. And that's when I remembered. You really were good to me. I looked at her and tilted my head. And remembering that now, what difference does it make? Her eyes slowly reddened. None. I nodded. Good. She lowered her head. Tears dripped onto the silver beads. Liu Group has already been heavily fined. A lot of our projects have been suspended. My brother will be going to prison too. My mother begged me last night to come see you. She said that if you'd withdraw even part of the evidence, the Liu family might still have a chance to survive. So you're here to beg me. She shook her head. I know you won't agree. Then why are you here? She looked up at me and answered softly. I wanted to hear it from you. To hear you tell me that you'll never forgive me. I laughed. What's wrong with you? She smiled too, but the tears kept falling. Maybe there is. When you used to chase after me, trying to explain yourself, I only found you annoying. Now I'm the one chasing after you, just to hear an answer I already know. I didn't respond. The courtroom doors opened. A court officer stood at the entrance, calling people's names. I turned and started walking inside. Behind me, Willow suddenly called out, George, I'm sorry. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. The person you owe that apology to is already dead. For a long time, there was nothing but silence behind me. On the day the verdict was announced, the court found Diego guilty of inciting others to commit assault, obstructing witnesses, and directing his subordinates to conceal critical evidence. The combined sentences left him with years behind bars. Liu Group was also heavily fined for multiple financial and operational violations. Several of its core projects were suspended, as Diego was escorted out of the courtroom by the bailiffs. His suit was still perfectly pressed. The only difference, the prayer beads were gone from his wrist. In their place was a pair of cold steel handcuffs. As he passed me, he stopped. George, do you think you've won? I looked at the handcuffs on his wrists and smiled. I don't know whether I won, but I do know. You lost. And that's enough. The corner of his mouth twitched. It looked as though he wanted to threaten me. In the end, all he said was, the Liu family won't collapse that easily. I nodded. That's fine. Then let it collapse. Slowly, the bailiffs escorted him into the police vehicle. Just before the door closed, he finally turned around and looked toward Willow, who was standing at the bottom of the courthouse steps. Her face was utterly drained of color. Even after the police vehicle drove away, she didn't move. Only after it disappeared around the corner did she seem to lose the strength holding her up. She slowly crouched to the ground, The reporters quickly surrounded her, covering her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook uncontrollably. She kept whispering, "Brother, please don't leave me." But this time, there was no one left to clean up the mess for her. Chapter 21. Old Master Wang couldn't escape the investigation. The last time I visited him, he was lying in a hospital bed while investigators questioned him. His hair had turned thin and snow-white. His frail body seemed to sink into the mattress. The man who had once decided other people's fates with a single sentence now needed a caregiver just to lift a glass of water. When he saw me walk in, his clouded eyes suddenly lit up. "George, you came." I placed a family asset division and restructuring agreement on the bedside table. "Sign it." He stared at the document. His hand shook violently. "Do you really have to take this so far?" I bent down and pressed a pen into his hand. "When you signed the papers sending me into the Liu family, did your hand shake like this too?" Tears streamed down his face. "I can't sign anymore." I took hold of his hand and guided it across the paper. "You can." The pen scratched across the page. His signature came out crooked and shaky. The moment it was finished, it was as if every ounce of strength had been drained from his body. He collapsed back onto the pillow. "The Wang family. The Wang family is finished." I picked up the agreement. "The Wang family isn't finished." I looked him straight in the eyes. "You are." When I left the hospital, the rain had stopped. The pavement was still wet. Headlights rolled across puddles, scattering broken reflections at my feet. Luis was waiting outside. Where to next? I tossed him the agreement. "Separate the clean businesses from Wang Corporation. You'll take charge of those. As for the dirty ones, turn them over. Pay what needs to be paid." He caught the file. "And you?" I looked up at the night sky, freshly washed by the rain. The city was filled with towering skyscrapers and brilliant lights. But beyond where those lights could reach, there were still rotten accounts hidden away. Still people forced to keep their heads down. Still people who trampled others beneath their feet, believing they'd never be the ones to fall. I reached up and touched the scar beside my ear. It had already healed over. "I'm going to start a company." Luis raised an eyebrow. "What kind of company?" I smiled. "The kind that specializes in dealing with people who refuse to learn their lesson." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed too. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Willow. "I'm in private room 8 at Starlight Club." The next message followed immediately. "I'll be kneeling here, waiting for you." I glanced at the screen, then blocked her. Luis asked, "You're not going?" I slipped the phone back into my pocket. How is a dead man supposed to keep an appointment? I opened the car door and climbed into the back seat. The car pulled away from the hospital and drove through the rain-soaked streets. Ahead, the red traffic light turned green. Leaning back against the seat, I slowly closed my eyes. The thick carpet in that private room, the rattling steel walls of the warehouse, the original George kneeling on the floor, his head lowered for what felt like forever. Then every memory stopped at the same moment, the instant I grabbed that wine bottle and brought it crashing down. The sound of shattering glass was crisp, clean, as though it had split two different lives apart. From that moment on, George never had to kneel before anyone ever again, and I no longer had to keep living for a dead man. I opened my eyes and watched the city lights drift backward outside the window. The fire inside my chest still hadn't gone out. Good. I'm going to need it for the road ahead.